every single one of you. We'd love to know, what part of the world are you watching from right now? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. Patrick Hutchinson adjusted his frayed tie, studying his reflection in the auditorium's restroom mirror. The worn suit, once perfectly tailored, hung loose on his frame. Another reminder of how much he'd lost in the past months. He splashed cold water on his face, steadying himself. This wasn't about him. Today was Caroline's moment. You clean up decent enough, big brother. Cheryl's voice echoed off the bathroom tiles. She leaned against the doorframe, phone clutched in her hand. This is the men's room, Cheryl. Since when has that stopped me? She crossed her arms. You haven't been answering my calls. Been busy trying to salvage what's left of the company. Patrick dried his hands, crumpling the paper towel with more force than necessary. Mark's lawyers are circling like vultures. Mark. Cheryl spat the name. Your trusted partner. The man who... Not now. Patrick cut her off. Caroline's waited 18 years for this day. I won't let business troubles spoil it. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as they took their seats. Tabitha was already there, resplendent in a crimson designer dress that probably cost more than what was left in their joint account. She didn't acknowledge their arrival. Principal Matthews stepped up to the podium. And now, I'm honored to present this year's valedictorian, Caroline Hutchinson. Caroline strode onto the stage, her black graduation gown swishing around her ankles. The gold medal around her neck caught the light. Patrick's chest swelled with pride. His little girl, poised, brilliant, everything he and Tabitha had hoped she'd become. Fellow graduates, Caroline began, her voice clear and strong. We stand here today on the threshold of our futures. A sharp laugh cut through the silence. Tabitha's laugh. She stood, swaying slightly, designer purse clutched in her manicured hands. Futures? She sneered. Oh, that's rich. Almost as rich as I'm about to be. Tabitha. Patrick grabbed her arm. Sit down. She yanked free. Don't touch me with your failure hands. Her voice carried across the hushed auditorium. You know what's funny? While our daughter's up there talking about futures, yours just went up in smoke. Mark Riley appeared at the end of their row, wearing an expensive suit and a predator's smile. The papers were just filed. Pat, you might want to check your phone. Caroline had stopped speaking, her prepared speech forgotten as she watched the scene unfold. Hundreds of eyes darted between the stage and the unfolding drama. You're just a pathetic empty shell with zero bank balance, Tabitha continued, her words slurring slightly. I'm going to live with my true love who's rich and 6.1 feet and bigger in size. You know what I mean. She staggered toward Mark, who caught her with practiced ease. His smirk spoke volumes. This was a performance they'd rehearsed. Mom? Caroline's voice cracked. What are you doing? What I should have done years ago, sweetheart. Upgrading. Tabitha wrapped herself around Mark. Your father's finished. The company's gone. But don't worry. Mommy's found us a better life. Patrick's hands curled into fists. The rage building inside him was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Years of careful control cracked like thin ice. Security, Principal Matthews called out. Please escort these people out. No need. Tabitha waved dismissively. We're leaving. Coming, Caroline? Caroline stood frozen on stage, the medal suddenly heavy around her neck. Tears streamed down her face as she watched her mother choose wealth over family, destroying what should have been her proudest moment. Patrick moved to follow them, murder in his eyes, but Cheryl's grip on his arm was like iron. Wait, she whispered urgently, pulling out her phone. You need to see this first. The video was grainy security footage, dated 3 months ago. The day his company's stock had mysteriously plummeted. Mark's office, after hours. Tabitha perched on his desk, champagne in hand. It's working perfectly, Mark's voice crackled through the phone speaker. He suspects nothing. The forged documents are in place. My darling mastermind. Tabitha's laugh was cruel. When the company crashes, he'll be too broken to fight back. And the graduation ceremony? Perfect timing for the grand finale. You've played your part beautifully. Mark pulled her close. The devoted wife, nursing him through his mysterious illness. Those supplements were inspired. Mercury poisoning is so hard to diagnose. Tabitha giggled, especially when the symptoms develop gradually. Per Patrick, so confused lately, so weak. The phone shook in Patrick's hand. Every unexplained symptom, every health supplement Tabitha had insisted he take, it all clicked into place. The fog that had plagued his mind wasn't stress or depression. She'd been poisoning him, deliberately, systematically. I've been gathering evidence, Cheryl said quietly, ever since I noticed the changes in you. The timing was too convenient. Your health declining just as the company started having troubles. Patrick watched the rest of the video in silence. His wife and best friend, celebrating the destruction of his life like it was a game they'd won. The rage crystallized into something colder, harder, more dangerous. Call the police. Caroline's voice made them both jump. She stood behind them, still in her graduation gown, eyes fixed on the phone screen. We have proof. We can stop them. No. Patrick's voice was ice. The police will take too long. The legal system is too easy to manipulate with enough money. And they've stolen plenty of mine. Dad, we do this my way. He looked at his daughter, seeing not a child but a warrior who just survived her first battle. They wanted to break us. Instead, they've freed me to be what I should have been all along. And what's that? Cheryl asked softly. The man who's going to destroy them both. Patrick smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. Completely, utterly, without mercy. The auditorium had nearly emptied, the ceremony forgotten in the wake of the scandal. Caroline removed her graduation gown, carefully folding it. I'm sorry about your speech, Patrick said. Don't be. She squared her shoulders. Some things are more important than speeches. Like making sure those two pay for what they've done. Cheryl's phone buzzed. My contact at the FBI just got back to me. You need to meet someone, an expert in cases like this. His name is Alberto Lowry. Set it up. Patrick loosened his tie, the gesture decisive rather than defeated. But first, we need to get Caroline somewhere safe. They'll try to use her against me. I'm not hiding, Caroline protested. No, Patrick agreed. You're going to be our secret weapon. But we play this smart. We play this patient. His eyes hardened. And when the time comes, we show them exactly what happens to people who betray this family. The transformation was visible. The confused, weakened man of the past months burning away to reveal steel underneath. Patrick Hutchinson had been a successful businessman playing by society's rules. Now those rules were broken, and so was he. But broken things, when reformed, could become weapons. They think they've won, he told his daughter and sister. They think this is the end of our story. But really, his smile was terrible in its promise. This is just the beginning. Caroline's bedroom had always been her sanctuary. Now it felt like a crime scene, strewn with printed emails that proved her mother's betrayal went deeper than anyone had imagined. She sat cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by rejection letters from every prestigious university she'd applied to. The printer hummed, spitting out another email. This one from Princeton. We regret to inform you. Caroline's hand trembled as she added it to the pile. Her perfect SAT scores, her valedictorian status, her glowing recommendations, none of it had mattered, because someone had made sure these schools never saw them. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Caroline? Her father's voice was stronger now. 3 days after stopping the supplements her mother had been feeding him. May I come in? It's open. Patrick entered, his eyes immediately taking in the sea of rejection letters. Something dangerous flickered across his face as he picked one up. Mom said I wasn't smart enough anyway. Caroline's voice broke. That I should just marry rich like she did. But that's not even the worst part. She pulled out her phone, opening her email drafts. I found these when I was trying to figure out what happened. Someone accessed my account months ago, declining acceptance offers before I ever saw them. Look at the IP address. Patrick studied the screen, his jaw tightening. Your mother's office computer. Yale, Stanford, Columbia. I got into all of them. Caroline's laugh was bitter. But the only acceptance letter that actually made it to our mailbox was from Valley Community College. She made sure of that. To keep you dependent, Patrick growled. To control your future like she tried to control mine. She wanted me to be just like her. Caroline's fingers curled into fists. A pretty parasite, living off other people's success. Getting by on manipulation instead of actual achievement. Patrick sat beside her, the bed creaking under his weight. I failed you, he said quietly. I should have seen what was happening. Should have protected you better. You were being poisoned, Caroline reminded him. Literally and figuratively. We both were, just in different ways. The door burst open, making them both jump. Cheryl stormed in, her face pale with fury. I just got the toxicology results. She thrust a paper at Patrick. Mercury levels off the charts. She's been doing this for at least a year, maybe longer. Small doses, building up gradually. The headaches, Patrick murmured. The confusion. The way I couldn't focus during crucial meetings. The perfect business partner. Caroline's voice dripped sarcasm. Too sick to notice what was happening to his own company. Oh, it gets better. Cheryl pulled out her ever-present phone. Remember Joyce Kuhn, Mark's assistant? She sent me this security footage from their office. The video showed Tabitha entering Mark's office after hours, carrying a small bottle. She carefully opened a container of supplements on his desk, the same brand she'd been giving Patrick. That's from 6 months ago, Cheryl explained. Right when the company's trouble started. She was dosing you at home and at work, making sure you never had a clear moment to figure out what they were doing. Patrick stood abruptly, pacing the room. His movements were precise, controlled, but Caroline recognized the rage simmering beneath the surface. This wasn't the confused, sickly father of recent months. This was the man who'd built an empire from nothing, a man discovering just how thoroughly he'd been betrayed. All those doctors, he said quietly, all those tests. And she was right there, playing the concerned wife, watching me deteriorate, watching our daughter's future shrink to match her twisted plans. We need to go to the police, Cheryl insisted. This is attempted murder. No. Patrick's voice was steel. Not yet. The police will demand proof beyond security footage. They'll want evidence that can't be explained away by expensive lawyers. And right now, Mark and Tabitha control all our resources. So what do we do? Caroline gathered the rejection letters, her movements deliberate. Just let them win? They've already lost. Patrick's smile was cold. They just don't know it yet. But first, we need help. Professional help. As if on cue, Cheryl's phone buzzed. Alberto's here, she announced. The FBI psychologist I told you about. He's specialized in cases like this for 20 years. Cases like what? Caroline asked. Narcissistic abuse. Psychological manipulation. Financial predators. Cheryl's expression was grim. Everything your mother excels at. They found Alberto Lowry waiting in the living room. He was older than Caroline expected, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of their appearance. Your wife's a textbook case, he said without preamble. She's been gaslighting both you and Caroline for years. The graduation outburst? That was just her grand finale. Gaslighting? Caroline frowned. Making you question your own reality. Your own worth. Alberto gestured at the rejection letters she still clutched. Convincing a brilliant student she's not smart enough for top schools. Making a successful businessman doubt his own judgment. It's all part of the pattern. Pattern? Patrick's voice was dangerous. Alberto nodded, opening his laptop. Meet Elizabeth Cooper and James Whitman. He turned the screen to show 2 news articles. Tabitha's previous husbands. Both successful businessmen. Both destroyed financially and psychologically within 3 years of marriage. Caroline stared at the photos. Different names, different faces, but the same story. Successful men reduced to shells of themselves, while their wives walked away wealthy. The difference this time, Alberto continued, is Mark Riley. In previous cases, she worked alone. But Mark's not just a convenient escape plan. They've been partners for years, targeting successful businessmen across 3 states. How did you find all this? Patrick demanded. Because I've been building a case against Mark for the past decade. Alberto's smile was sharp. Ever since he walked away clean from the suspicious death of Joyce Kuhn's sister. But I could never prove anything. The victims were too destroyed to testify. The evidence too circumstantial. Until now, Cheryl added. Until they got greedy and sloppy. Until they hurt my family. Caroline slipped away, heading back to her room. She returned moments later with a small box. I found these last night, she said quietly, removing several USB drives. Mom's video diaries. She's been recording everything. Every scheme. Every manipulation. She called us her best performance yet. The room fell silent as Alberto connected one of the drives to his laptop. Tabitha's voice filled the room, clinical and cold as she detailed how she'd slowly isolated Patrick from his friends, how she'd manipulated Caroline's insecurities, how she'd timed the mercury doses for maximum effect. Everything was fake. Caroline's voice was hard. Even my childhood memories. No. Patrick pulled her close. What's between us, father and daughter, that was real. That's why they couldn't break it, even with all their schemes. So what now? Caroline asked, her eyes fixed on the laptop where her mother continued to calmly describe destroying their lives. Now, Patrick's voice was quietly lethal. We show them what happens when you target the wrong family. When you mistake patience for weakness. When you think you've won, only to discover you've created your own worst nightmare. We'll need a plan, Alberto warned. These people are dangerous. They've destroyed lives before, and they won't hesitate to do worse if they feel threatened. Good. Patrick's smile was terrible to behold. Because I'm done playing by their rules. Done being the victim. They wanted to break me? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. They succeeded. Now they get to meet what they've created. Caroline watched her father, seeing the transformation complete. The confused, sickly man of the past year was gone. In his place stood someone harder, darker. A man carved from the betrayal and pain, reformed into something dangerous. They took everything from us, she said quietly. No, Patrick corrected. They showed us who they really are. And in doing so, they showed me who I need to be. He turned to Alberto. Tell me everything you know about them. Every weakness, every secret, every skeleton they think is safely buried. And then? Cheryl asked. Patrick's eyes were cold. And then we bury them instead. Alberto Lowry's office bore the organized chaos of a man who lived in details. Case files lined the walls, each one representing lives torn apart by predators like Mark and Tabitha. He'd arranged to meet them here after hours, away from prying eyes. Start at the beginning, Patrick commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd spent years in boardrooms. Everything you know about their operation. Alberto pulled out a thick file. Mark Riley first appeared on our radar in 2015. A string of suspicious business acquisitions, always targeting companies in crisis. But the pattern went deeper. He spread photos across his desk. Different faces, different years, but similar stories. These are the CEOs whose companies he acquired. Notice anything? Caroline leaned forward. They all look unwell. Exactly. Alberto tapped one photo. James Morrison, 2016. Diagnosed with early-onset dementia after a series of erratic business decisions cost his company millions. Except, he pulled out a medical report. Post-acquisition blood work showed elevated mercury levels. The dementia symptoms vanished within months. Like dad's symptoms, Cheryl noted. Then there's David Chun, 2018. Similar story. Mysterious illness, business collapse, followed by a suspiciously convenient acquisition by Mark's company. Alberto's eyes narrowed. And in both cases, guess who was dating the CEO during their decline? Tabitha. Patrick's voice was ice. Under different names, but yes. She'd meet them at charity events, start a whirlwind romance, then push for marriage within months. Always targeting successful businessmen with minimal family connections. Caroline studied the photos. How many? 5 confirmed cases before your father. But she got better with each one. More sophisticated. The early victims were obviously destroyed. But later, Alberto pulled out more photos. She learned subtlety. The victims appeared to simply make bad decisions, have health issues. Nothing suspicious enough to trigger investigations. Until she met Mark, Patrick concluded. They recognized something in each other. A shared talent for destruction. Alberto's voice hardened. Mark provided the business framework, the legal cover. Tabitha brought the personal touch, the emotional manipulation that kept victims from fighting back. The perfect partnership. Cheryl's disgust was evident. But why stay with Dad so long? Caroline asked. Her other marriages lasted months, maybe a year. Alberto smiled grimly. Because your father's company was different. Bigger prize, needed more time to dismantle properly. And he hesitated. And Patrick prompted. And you had something the others didn't. Something that made you valuable beyond just money. Alberto met Caroline's eyes. A daughter who could be used as leverage. An emotional hostage to ensure compliance. Caroline felt sick. She stayed for me? She stayed because controlling you meant controlling your father. A man might fight back when he's being destroyed, but not if it risks his child's future. Patrick's hands gripped the chair arms, knuckles white. All those years, every moment I thought was real, was carefully orchestrated. Alberto finished. The caring wife, the devoted mother. It was all an act designed to maintain control until they were ready for the final strike. The graduation, Caroline whispered. Why then? Why like that? Maximum psychological impact. Alberto's clinical tone made it worse somehow. Public humiliation, destruction of a moment that should have been triumphant. It's a standard narcissistic play. They don't just want to win. They want to break their victims completely. Cheryl pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages. My contact at the SEC just got back to me. Mark's company. The numbers don't add up. The acquisitions, the turnarounds. It's all smoke and mirrors. Of course it is. Patrick's laugh was harsh. He's not a businessman. He's a vulture. He doesn't create value. He feeds off destruction. A destruction he engineers, Alberto added. The mercury poisoning, the psychological warfare. It's all designed to make successful companies vulnerable. Then he swoops in, buys them for pennies on the dollar, and strips them for parts. And my mother helps him do this? Caroline's voice cracked. She deliberately destroys people's lives? She does more than help. She's essential to the operation. Alberto opened his laptop, pulling up more files. The psychological manipulation, the gaslighting. It's what makes the victims vulnerable. Mark handles the financial death, but Tabitha, she handles the soul death. The room fell silent as they absorbed this. Patrick stood, pacing the office with controlled fury. You said you've been building a case for years, he finally said. Why haven't you moved against them? Lack of evidence. Lack of witnesses willing to testify. Alberto's frustration was evident. These kinds of predators, they're experts at staying just inside the law, and their victims are usually too destroyed, too ashamed to fight back. But now we have proof, Cheryl insisted. The video diaries, the mercury poisoning. We have fragments, Alberto corrected. Enough to show a pattern, but not enough for a conviction. Mark's lawyers would tear it apart, paint Tabitha as a troubled woman acting alone. They've dodged consequences before. Patrick stopped pacing. Then we don't play by legal rules. Dad, Caroline started. No. His voice was steel. The law can't touch them? Fine. We'll handle this ourselves. But first, he turned to Alberto. I need everything you have. Every case, every victim, every detail they think is safely buried. Alberto studied him for a long moment. You understand what you're asking? This isn't just about revenge. These people, they're dangerous. They've destroyed lives, careers, families. And those are just the cases we know about. Good. Patrick's smile was terrible. Then they'll understand exactly what's happening when I do the same to them. If we do this, Alberto warned, we do it smart. No direct confrontation, no threats. They need to think they've won completely, that you're broken beyond recovery. Oh, I'm broken, Patrick agreed, but not the way they intended. They wanted to break my spirit, my will to fight. Instead, his laugh was cold. Instead, they broke the chains of morality that would have held me back. Caroline stood, moving to her father's side. We do this together. As a family. No. Patrick's voice softened slightly. You focus on your future. I won't let them take that from you too. My future? Caroline's laugh was bitter. They already took that. Every college acceptance, every opportunity, gone because of them. So yes, we do this together. They made it personal for both of us. Alberto watched them, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded. Very well. But we do this my way. Carefully. Methodically. One wrong move and they'll destroy what's left of your lives. They already tried that. Patrick's voice was quiet. Deadly. Now they get to learn about consequences. Real consequences, not the legal slaps on the wrist they're used to. What's our first move? Cheryl asked. What we have here, Alberto said, closing his laptop, is the most complete documentation of their operation I've ever seen. The video diaries, the medical evidence, the financial records. It's unprecedented, and still not enough for a legal victory, Patrick stated, his expression hardening. Not yet. Alberto gathered the files. But for the first time, we have a chance to expose everything. To stop them before they destroy more lives. Caroline stood beside her father, determination replacing the earlier shock and grief. They thought breaking us would make us weak. A fatal miscalculation, Patrick agreed, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. His gaze swept over the evidence of lives destroyed, families shattered. Something shifted in his eyes, a fundamental change that went beyond mere anger or revenge. They had tried to break Patrick Hutchinson. Instead, they had forged him into something new, something that would haunt their every step until justice was served. The office fell silent, each person absorbing the weight of what they discovered, the extent of Mark and Tabitha's crimes, the depth of their betrayal, and the absolute certainty that this time, finally, they would face consequences for their actions. 3 weeks after the graduation ceremony disaster, Patrick sat in his study reviewing financial documents. The fog of mercury poisoning had lifted, leaving his mind razor-sharp. Each number, each transaction told a story of calculated destruction. Mark's not just acquiring distressed companies, he muttered, spreading papers across his desk. He's manufacturing the distress. Cheryl leaned over his shoulder, examining a spreadsheet. Look at the pattern. Every business he targeted followed the same trajectory. Sudden financial problems, mysterious management issues, then a surprise takeover at rock-bottom prices. Patrick's finger traced a column of numbers. He's not a businessman. He's a vulture with connections. Alberto entered, carrying fresh coffee. My contacts at the SEC are looking into his deals, but he's got half the regulatory board in his pocket. Patrick's laugh held no humor. Of course he does. Predators protect their hunting grounds. Speaking of predators, Cheryl checked her phone. Tabitha's giving interviews. Playing the brave survivor who escaped her unstable husband. Perfect. Patrick's smile was calculated. Let her think she's winning the PR war. It'll make her careless. Dad. Caroline appeared in the doorway, dressed in designer clothes that would have been unthinkable on their previous budget. Are you sure about this plan? Once we start. We've already started. Patrick stood, studying his daughter. Gone was the innocent graduate. In her place stood a young woman forged in betrayal's fire. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. No. Caroline's voice was steel. She used me against you for years. Now it's my turn to return the favor. A knock at the front door interrupted them. Alberto checked the security feed on his tablet. Right on schedule. Violet Gardner. The woman who entered carried herself with the practiced grace of old money, but her eyes held a predator's focus. Patrick Hutchinson? My name is Violet Gardner. Patrick gestured to a chair. Mark Riley's first wife. The one who supposedly had a nervous breakdown and signed away her family company. There was nothing supposed about the breakdown. Violet's smile was sharp. When you discover your husband's been systematically destroying your family's 100-year legacy while your best friend, your supposed confidant, helps him do it. Tabitha, Caroline guessed. She had a different name then. Charlotte Williams. Violet accepted the coffee Alberto offered. She befriended me during the worst of it. Always there with a shoulder to cry on. Always suggesting new medications, new therapists. who supported Mark's diagnosis of your instability, Patrick finished. Exactly. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. My own board of directors thought I was having a psychiatric episode. Every attempt to expose them just made me look more unstable. Cheryl pulled up documents on her tablet. Your company's assets were sold off piece by piece. While I was recovering in a private facility, Violet's composure cracked slightly. By the time I got out, there was nothing left. Even my evidence had vanished. Files deleted, security footage corrupted, witnesses suddenly unreachable. But you kept gathering proof, Alberto said. It wasn't a question. For 8 years, Violet opened her briefcase, removing a thick file. Every deal, every victim, every scheme. I tracked them across 3 states, watching them destroy lives with surgical precision. But I could never get close enough to stop them. Until now, Patrick examined the file's contents. Because now they're distracted by their latest victory. They think they've won completely. Violet's eyes met Patrick's. The graduation scene? Pure Tabitha. She loves her grand theatrical moments. And Mark loves watching people break, Patrick finished. Which is exactly what we're going to give them. Caroline moved to the window, watching the street below. The gossip blogs are already running stories about you, Dad. Your emotional collapse after Mom left. The drinking, the erratic behavior. All carefully staged. Alberto nodded approvingly. The security cameras at your favorite bar caught quite a show last night. Good. Patrick's smile was cold. Let them think I'm spiraling. Let them enjoy their victory. Meanwhile, he turned to his daughter. Are you ready for your part? Caroline straightened, channeling every lesson in poise and manipulation she'd learned from her mother. You mean my tearful reconciliation with Mom? My realization that you really are the failure she always said? It's dangerous, Cheryl warned. If they suspect, they won't. Caroline's laugh was pure Tabitha. I learned from the best, didn't I? 18 years watching her manipulate everyone around her. And now, her smile was predatory. Now I get to use those lessons against her. We'll need to sell it completely, Alberto cautioned. A public falling out between you and your father. Something dramatic enough to convince them. Patrick moved to his desk, pressing a button on his phone. Already arranged. The charity gala next week, the one celebrating Mark's latest business triumph. Caroline will be there, denouncing me in front of all their society friends. While you appear to sink deeper into depression, Violet nodded. Classic Mark bait. He can't resist going after wounded prey, especially ones he's already hurt. But first, Patrick turned to Alberto. We need insurance. The kind that protects Caroline if things go wrong. Alberto opened his briefcase, removing several small devices. Latest in surveillance tech. Untraceable, undetectable. We can hide them in jewelry, accessories. Perfect for a society girl's new collection. Caroline smirked. Mom always said appearances matter. This is more than appearances. Patrick's voice hardened. If they suspect anything, if you're in danger for even a moment, they won't suspect. Caroline's confidence wasn't an act. They're too arrogant, too convinced of their own superiority. Besides, she held up her phone, playing one of Tabitha's video diaries. I've got 18 years of studying the master manipulator herself. Violet examined the surveillance equipment. These are military grade. Your FBI contacts. Former FBI, Alberto corrected. But yes, they owe me favors. And they're very interested in Mark's operation. Speaking of operation, Cheryl pulled up more files. Mark's assistant reached out. Joyce Kuhn says she has information. Not yet. Patrick's command was absolute. We verify everything first. Trust no one until we've vetted them completely. He turned to Violet. How much does Mark know about your evidence gathering? Nothing. He thinks I'm still broken, still afraid. Last he heard, I was living quietly in Europe, too traumatized to return to America. Good. Patrick studied the surveillance gear. Keep it that way. For now, you're our secret weapon. The nightmare from his past he never saw coming. Caroline tried on a diamond necklace containing one of Alberto's devices. How long do we have to play these roles? Pretending to side with them, watching them gloat, as long as it takes. Patrick's voice was implacable. They spent years destroying us piece by piece. Now we return the favor. Every social connection, every business ally, every shield they think protects them. We'll strip them away one by one. And then? Cheryl asked. Patrick's smile was terrifying in its promise. And then we show them exactly what kind of monster they created when they tried to break me. The room fell silent, each person absorbed in preparation. Files were studied, plans refined, contingencies developed. They had become a precision unit, each with their role to play in the destruction of Mark and Tabitha's carefully constructed world. One last thing, Patrick addressed them all. Once we start, there's no going back. No hesitation, no mercy. They chose this war. We'll make sure they regret it with every breath they have left. Caroline straightened, embracing her new role completely. Don't worry, Dad. By the time we're done, they'll wish they'd never heard the name Hutchinson. No, Patrick corrected, his voice carrying absolute conviction. By the time we're done, they'll wish they'd never been born. The pieces were set, the players ready. Act 1 of their destruction had been written in betrayal and poison. Act 2 would be written in surgical precision and calculated revenge. Mark and Tabitha had orchestrated their perfect takedown of the Hutchinsons. Now they would learn the true meaning of destruction. The Westbrook Country Club's annual charity gala sparkled with wealth and pretension. Caroline adjusted her diamond necklace, the one containing Alberto's most sophisticated surveillance equipment, and approached her mother across the crowded ballroom. Darling. Tabitha's voice carried just the right note of maternal concern. I was hoping you'd come. How could I miss Mark's big night? Caroline embraced her mother, noting how Tabitha's expensive perfume couldn't quite mask the champagne on her breath. Though I'm surprised Dad's not here making a scene. Oh, haven't you heard? Mark appeared beside them, radiating predatory satisfaction. Your father's been quite indisposed lately. Something about drinking away his sorrows at O'Malley's bar? Caroline allowed her face to show calculated concern. The drinking's getting worse. Yesterday he called me, rambling about conspiracies and betrayals. It was embarrassing. Poor dear. Tabitha's sympathy was theatrical. I tried to shield you from his instability for so long. You were right about him, Mom. Caroline's voice carried perfectly to nearby guests. About everything. I can't believe I wasted so many years believing in his dreams of building something meaningful. At least you had the sense to align yourself with real success. Mark's smile widened. Speaking of success, I might have an opportunity for a bright young woman with your potential. A position in our corporate development team. Really? Caroline infused her voice with the same breathless materialism she'd heard from her mother countless times. That would be amazing. Of course, darling. Tabitha preened. You're just like me. We deserve the best. Over the next hour, Caroline worked the room with precision, dropping carefully crafted comments about Patrick's decline. Each sympathetic glance, each whispered conversation carried echoes of her mother's own manipulation techniques, learned from years of careful observation. It's tragic, really. She confided to Eleanor Blackwood, one of Mark's major investors. Dad's drinking in bars, ranting about how Mom poisoned him. Can you imagine? The paranoid delusions of a man who can't accept his own failures. Eleanor's expression shifted from sympathy to discomfort. Mercury poisoning, wasn't it? That's what he's claiming. Complete fantasy. Caroline waved dismissively. Though I suppose it's easier than admitting he destroyed his own company through incompetence. The surveillance equipment captured everything. Each conversation, each reaction. Through her earpiece, designed to look like a diamond stud, she heard Alberto's quiet approval. Perfect, his voice whispered. They're eating up every word. Keep pushing the unstable father narrative. Mark watched her performance with growing interest. You know, he murmured during a quiet moment, you remind me of your mother when I first met her. That same understanding of human nature. High praise. Caroline sipped her champagne. Though I hope I'm not as obvious about it as Daddy. Did you know he actually tried to hire a private investigator to follow you and Mom? Pathetic. Is that so? Mark's amusement barely masked his predatory focus. And what did this investigator find? Nothing, of course. Caroline rolled her eyes. Just more fuel for Dad's paranoid fantasies. I had to distance myself. His desperation was becoming toxic. Throughout the evening, Caroline orchestrated moments that showcased Tabitha's cruelty. A pointed comment here, a strategic question there, each designed to make her mother's mask slip just enough for others to glimpse the truth beneath. Remember when Dad insisted you were tampering with his medication? Caroline asked loudly during dinner. As if you'd ever do something so crude. Tabitha's laugh held a sharp edge. Your father always did have an overactive imagination. Though I suppose small minds often resort to conspiracy theories when faced with their own inadequacy. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Caroline noted their reactions, mentally cataloging each potential crack in Mark and Tabitha's social armor. You've done well tonight, Alberto's voice approved in her ear. Every conversation recorded, every reaction documented. Your father would be proud. The thought of Patrick deliberately playing the role of broken man at O'Malley's bar strengthened her resolve. This was war, fought not with weapons but with carefully crafted perceptions. As the evening wound down, Mark drew her aside. I've been impressed with your adaptation to reality, Caroline. Many children of failed men never break free of their father's delusions. I'm nothing if not practical. Caroline smiled, channeling Tabitha's predatory grace. Success leaves clues, as they say. And you've left quite a trail to follow. Perhaps you'd like to see more? Mark's offer was calculated. I'm hosting a private investment seminar next week. Very exclusive. The kind of opportunity that could secure your future. I'd be honored. Caroline touched his arm, just as she'd seen her mother do countless times. Though we should probably keep it quiet. Dad's been calling your investors, trying to spread his conspiracy theories. I'd hate for his instability to reflect poorly on me. Your secret's safe with me. Mark's smile didn't reach his eyes. After all, we're practically family now. Later that night, Caroline met with Alberto in a secure location, reviewing the evening's surveillance data. Every word recorded, Alberto confirmed, downloading the files. Every interaction documented. But more importantly, you've established yourself as a player in their world. They think I'm just like her. Caroline's disgust was real. A social climber willing to betray her own blood for status. Good. Alberto's approval was cold. Let them think that. Let them believe they've corrupted you just like they corrupted her. It makes the betrayal so much sweeter when they realize their protégé is actually their destroyer. Caroline removed the surveillance jewelry, each piece a technological marvel of espionage. How's Dad holding up? Playing the broken man can't be easy for someone like him. Your father's strength isn't in question. Alberto's voice held respect. He's channeling every ounce of rage into his performance. Mark's people report he's been at O'Malley's every night, getting progressively more unstable. The perfect wounded prey. And Violet's evidence? Being compiled as we speak. Each piece carefully documented, ready to deploy at the perfect moment. Alberto began packing up the surveillance gear. But remember, we have to be patient. Let them think they're the ones in control. Caroline nodded, already planning her next performance. They spent years teaching me how to wear masks. Now they get to learn just how well I studied their lessons. The executive floor of Riley Enterprises was silent at midnight. Caroline moved through the darkened corridors with practiced ease, her heels carefully chosen for stealth. The security cards Mark had given her, so trustingly, so foolishly, worked exactly as planned. Third door on the left, Alberto's voice guided through her earpiece. Joyce Kuhn's office should contain the financial records we need. Caroline smiled, remembering Mark's patronizing tone as he'd given her the junior executive access card. He'd thought he was grooming another protégé. Instead, he'd handed her the keys to his kingdom. The office door opened silently. Caroline moved to the computer, inserting the specialized drive Alberto had provided. Numbers scrolled across the screen as encrypted files transferred. Well, a voice from the doorway froze her in place. I wondered how long it would take you to make this move. Joyce Kuhn stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. Mark's trusted assistant, and according to their intelligence, his occasional lover, studied Caroline with unreadable eyes. Ms. Kuhn. Caroline's mind raced through contingency plans. I can explain. Save it. Joyce moved to her desk, pressing a button that Caroline knew would summon security. Except, no alarms sounded. No guards appeared. Instead, Joyce removed a flash drive from her drawer. 8 years, Joyce said quietly. 8 years I've worked for that monster, watching him destroy lives. Watching him get away with murder. Caroline stayed silent, letting the moment play out. He killed my sister. Joyce's voice hardened. Anna Kuhn. Remember that name? The tragic car accident that Mark used to launch his takeover of her company? I'm listening. No accident. She threatened to expose one of his schemes. Next day, brake lines mysteriously failed. Joyce's laugh was bitter. I took this job to find proof. Spent years gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment, the right allies. She held out the flash drive. Everything's here. Financial records, offshore accounts, recordings of Mark ordering hits disguised as accidents. But I could never use it, not without signing my own death warrant. Caroline studied her carefully. Why show me this now? Because I've been watching you. Joyce's smile was sharp. The grieving daughter, suddenly embracing her mother's materialistic values, playing the social climber so perfectly? Please. I've worked for Mark long enough to recognize a long con when I see one. In her earpiece, Alberto's voice was urgent. Find out what she wants. This could change everything. What's your price? Caroline asked directly. Price? Joyce laughed. Honey, I don't want money. I want that bastard destroyed. I want him to lose everything, just like he made Anna lose everything. I want him to know what it feels like when someone you trust turns out to be your destroyer. Caroline considered her options. This was deviation from the plan, but also an opportunity they couldn't ignore. Assuming I believe you, she said carefully, what exactly are you offering? Partnership. Joyce's eyes gleamed. You're good, very good. But you're playing in a world you don't fully understand. I know where all the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively. I know which investors are vulnerable, which allies can be turned, which secrets would shatter their carefully constructed facade. And in return, I want to be there when he falls. Want to see his face when he realizes his trusted assistant helped orchestrate his destruction. Joyce's smile was terrible. 8 years I've waited for the right opportunity. Your father's crusade, is it? In her ear, Alberto was running calculations. Her story checks out. Anna Kuhn's death matches what we know about Mark's methods. This could be the key we need. Caroline made her decision. I need to make a call. The phone rang twice before Patrick answered. His voice was cold, controlled. Report. Caroline explained the situation succinctly. The evidence. The offer. The potential risks and rewards. Patrick's response was immediate. Put her on. Caroline handed her phone to Joyce, watching as Mark's assistant detailed 8 years of gathered evidence. 8 years of waiting, watching, documenting every crime and betrayal. Acceptable, Patrick finally declared. But understand this, you work with us, you follow our plan exactly. No independent moves, no personal vendetta getting in the way of the larger goal, clear? Crystal. Joyce's smile was predatory. I've waited 8 years for revenge. I can wait a little longer to do it right. After the call ended, both women regarded each other with new respect. So, Joyce said, shall we discuss how to dismantle an empire? The next hour was spent in detailed planning. Joyce's inside knowledge combined with Caroline's social intelligence, creating a strategy that would attack Mark and Tabitha's organization from all angles. Your mother's getting careless, Joyce noted, pulling up social media posts. The triumph of destroying your father has made her sloppy. The real Tabitha is showing through more often, especially when she drinks, which is increasingly frequent. Caroline smiled coldly. Amazing how stress can drive someone to self-medicate. Speaking of stress, Joyce checked her phone. Mark's been asking questions about Patrick's mental state. The broken man act has him fascinated. Dad always said Mark's greatest weakness was his ego. Caroline's voice held satisfaction. He can't resist going back to re-break someone he's already wounded. Just be careful, Joyce warned. Mark's paranoid. If he suspects even for a moment that this is all a setup, he won't. Caroline's confidence wasn't an act. He's too convinced of his own superiority, too certain that he's the predator here. As they finalized their plans, Caroline felt the pieces falling into place. Mark's assistant with years of damning evidence. Tabitha's mask cracking under the weight of her apparent victory. Patrick's calculated descent drawing their enemies closer. The trap was nearly ready. All that remained was to let their target's own arrogance lead them into it. One last thing, Joyce said as Caroline prepared to leave. When this all goes down, when Mark finally realizes how completely he's been played, I want him to know that Anna's sister says goodbye. Caroline met her eyes, recognizing the same cold fury that drove her own actions. He'll know. They'll all know. Every person they've hurt, every life they've destroyed. It all comes back to haunt them. The office fell silent, two women united in their dedication to destruction. Outside, the city slept, unaware that in this quiet moment, the fate of an empire was being sealed. They had become the architects of revenge, each playing their part in a symphony of destruction. And when the final note played, Mark and Tabitha would learn that their greatest mistake wasn't in betraying the Hutchinsons. Their greatest mistake was in teaching their victims how to destroy so completely. The grand ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton buzzed with anticipation. Mark and Tabitha's engagement party drew the city's elite. Each guest carefully chosen, each detail meticulously planned to showcase their triumph. Tonight marks new beginnings, Mark announced to the gathered crowd, champagne glass raised. And new partnerships that will shape the future of business in this city. Caroline watched from near the stage, her diamond necklace recording every word. The same necklace that had captured months of incriminating conversations, confidential meetings, and unguarded moments. The timing's perfect, Alberto's voice whispered through her earpiece. All the major players are here. Every person who enabled them, every social connection they relied on. Tabitha glowed with victory, her designer gown matching the massive engagement ring on her finger. Mark and I want to thank you all for supporting us through what's been a challenging transition period. Quiet laughter rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew about Patrick's public breakdown, his apparent descent into alcoholism and paranoid accusations. If I could have everyone's attention, Mark gestured to the massive screens flanking the stage. We've prepared a little presentation celebrating our journey together. Caroline moved quietly toward the audiovisual control room where Joyce waited. Through her earpiece, she heard Patrick's voice. Execute. The screens flickered to life, but instead of the romantic montage Mark had planned, Tabitha's face appeared. Not the polished society wife, but the calculating predator from her video diaries. Day 457 of the Hutchinson operation, Tabitha's recorded voice filled the ballroom. The mercury doses are working perfectly. Patrick's cognitive decline is right on schedule. Mark says another month of confusion and erratic behavior should be enough to convince the board to force him out. The crowd's murmur turned uncertain. Tabitha froze mid-sip, her champagne glass slipping from nerveless fingers. What is this? Mark strode toward the AV controls, but Caroline was already at the microphone. Oh, don't stop it now, she said, her voice carrying clearly. The next part is particularly enlightening. The part where you discuss how you murdered Joyce Kuhn's sister. The screen split, showing multiple video feeds. Mark in his office, calmly discussing accident arrangements with various shady figures. Tabitha methodically contaminating Patrick's supplements. Both of them laughing about their previous victims. This is absurd, Mark blustered. Obviously doctored footage. Like the footage of Anna Kuhn's murder? Joyce emerged from the control room, her phone recording everything. Or perhaps the offshore account transfers. The falsified medical records? The paid hitmen? Security. Tabitha's scream held real panic. Shut this down immediately. They're a bit busy. Alberto stepped forward, badge in hand. Dealing with the FBI task force currently seizing your offices and homes. Did you really think Patrick's breakdown was real? That his daughter would genuinely side with her mother's murderous attempts? The crowd backed away from Mark and Tabitha as years of carefully hidden evidence played across the screens. Each crime, each manipulation, each betrayal exposed in high definition. This is how it ends, Caroline's voice cut through the chaos. Not with a whimper, but with the truth. Every person you've destroyed, every life you've ruined, they're all here tonight. In person or in evidence, waiting for justice. Violet Gardner emerged from the crowd, phone in hand. 6 years I spent gathering proof. 6 years watching you destroy others the way you destroyed me. But I wasn't alone, was I? We were all watching, all waiting. You can't prove any of this, Mark snarled, but his eyes darted toward the exits where FBI agents now stood. Actually, Patrick's voice silenced the room as he entered. Not a trace of the broken man he'd played for months. We can prove all of it. Every meeting you thought was secret, every conversation you assumed was private, all recorded by the surveillance equipment you so generously funded through our social circle. He approached Tabitha, his expression carved from granite. The supplements were an inspired touch, I'll admit. Mercury poisoning, subtle, difficult to trace. But you got sloppy. Started enjoying your victory too much. Forgot the first rule of destruction. Never leave evidence. Patrick, darling. Tabitha's voice dripped honey even now. Surely we can. Agent Morrison. Patrick cut her off, addressing a stern-faced FBI agent. I believe attempting to murder one's spouse with mercury constitutes a federal offense. Among other charges, Morrison agreed. Ms. Riley, or should I say Ms. Williams, given that's the name on your previous marriage licenses, you have the right to remain silent. Mark lunged for the door, but Alberto's team was ready. He went down hard. Years of cultivated dignity shattered as handcuffs clicked into place. The evidence has already been transmitted to every major law enforcement agency, Caroline informed the stunned crowd. Along with dossiers on every person in this room who helped facilitate their schemes. I'd suggest cooperating fully with the investigation if you want leniency. The ballroom erupted in chaos as guests rushed to distance themselves, phones already dialing lawyers. Through it all, Patrick stood immobile, watching his wife and former partner being led away in handcuffs. You taught me well, Caroline told her mother as she passed. Every manipulation technique, every cruel lesson in using people's weaknesses against them. I just found a better purpose for those skills. Tabitha's mask finally cracked completely. I'll destroy you for this, she hissed. You'll do nothing. Patrick's voice could have frozen flame. Except spend every day of your remaining life remembering this moment. Remembering how completely you failed. As the FBI led them out, Joyce stepped forward with the final piece of evidence. A recorded confession from one of Mark's hitmen, detailing every murder, every staged accident. Anna, she whispered, watching Mark's face contort as he realized just how thoroughly he'd been destroyed. This one's for you, sister. The screens continued playing their damning evidence to an emptying ballroom. Years of crimes exposed in a single night, a carefully constructed empire dismantled by its own architect's arrogance. Caroline found her father standing alone, watching the aftermath of their revenge. Are you all right? Patrick's smile held no warmth. I'm perfect. This is exactly what I promised them. Complete, systematic destruction. No mercy, no second chances. Just justice served cold and precise. The night that was meant to celebrate Mark and Tabitha's ultimate triumph had become instead the instrument of their complete destruction. As the FBI continued gathering evidence and taking statements, Patrick surveyed the wreckage of their carefully constructed social world with the satisfaction of a master strategist, seeing his endgame play out exactly as planned. 6 months after the engagement party, Patrick stood in his newly renovated home office, reviewing the morning's headlines. Mark and Tabitha's arrests had triggered an avalanche of investigations, exposing decades of financial crimes and manipulation. A knock at the door made him look up. Cheryl entered, legal briefs tucked under her arm. Ready for today? More than ready. Patrick's voice carried the satisfaction of a man seeing his plans unfold perfectly. How's our guest list looking? Every victim they ever targeted will be in that courtroom. Violet Gardner's coordinating the civil suits, 32 plaintiffs so far. And Alberto's psychological testimony is scheduled for this afternoon. The doorbell rang, and Caroline went to answer it. She returned with Joyce Kuhn, who transitioned from Mark's assistant to star witness for the prosecution. The DA called. Joyce announced without preamble. Mark's lawyers are trying for a plea deal. They're offering full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. Patrick's laugh held no humor. Let me guess. He's willing to testify against Tabitha? Apparently, she was the mastermind. Joyce's smile was sharp. He was just an innocent businessman led astray by a manipulative woman. How predictable. Patrick turned as Cheryl's phone buzzed. News. Cheryl checked the message. Tabitha's back. Your turn. Patrick nodded, leaving his office to find Tabitha standing in their former living room, surrounded by moving boxes. After her arrest, the courts had granted her one supervised visit to collect personal belongings. Still playing the villain, Patrick? Her voice attempted its old manipulation. After everything we shared? You mean after every lie you told? Every poison you fed me? Patrick's voice remained perfectly controlled. Or perhaps you mean after trying to murder me while destroying our daughter's future. I can explain everything. Save it for your trial. Cheryl appeared in the doorway. Your supervised visit has a time limit, and you're only here for your personal effects. Though I should warn you, anything purchased with fraudulently obtained money has been seized as evidence. Tabitha's composure cracked. You can't do this to me. I'm still Caroline's mother. No, Caroline's voice made them all turn. She stood tall, confident, every inch her father's daughter. You're the woman who poisoned my father and sabotaged my future. The woman who taught me that family means nothing compared to money and power. She smiled, the expression chilling in its familiarity. Thank you for those lessons, by the way. They served me perfectly in helping destroy you. Caroline, your daughter now calls me Mom. Cheryl cut in, her satisfaction evident. Here's your things and the court papers. You're not welcome here anymore. The FBI agent supervising the visit stepped forward. Time's up, Ms. Williams. This isn't over. Tabitha hissed as they led her out. I'll find a way. To what? Patrick's voice stopped her. To manipulate more victims? To poison more lives? No, Tabitha. The only thing you'll be finding is justice. Real justice, not the legal facades you've hidden behind. After she was gone, Patrick gathered his family. The trials start today, both criminal and civil. Every person they've hurt gets their day in court. The evidence is overwhelming, Joyce confirmed. Between my records, Violet's documentation, and the surveillance we gathered, and my testimony about the psychological manipulation, Caroline added. The DA says it's crucial to establishing the pattern of abuse. Mark's empire is already crumbling, Cheryl reported, checking her tablet. The FBI's investigation has exposed every fraudulent deal, every coerced acquisition. His investors are fleeing, his assets frozen. Patrick nodded, satisfaction evident. And the foundation? The Victim Support Network is growing daily, Joyce confirmed. More survivors coming forward, sharing their stories. The psychological support services are overwhelmed with requests. Good. Patrick's voice held absolute conviction. Let every person they've hurt know they're not alone, that there's a way back from destruction. The next week saw a parade of witnesses through the courts. Alberto's testimony about the psychological manipulation proved devastating, backed by Caroline's first-hand account of years of gaslighting and control. Violet Gardner led the civil suits, each victim telling their story of systematic destruction. Mark's carefully constructed image of a successful businessman crumbled as victim after victim detailed his methods. Joyce's evidence proved crucial, years of meticulous documentation supporting every accusation. The recorded confession from Mark's hitman about Anna Kuhn's murder was the final nail in his legal coffin. Through it all, Patrick watched from the gallery, his expression unchanging as the full scope of Mark and Tabitha's crimes was exposed. Each day brought new revelations, new victims, new evidence of lives destroyed for profit and power. Finally, after weeks of testimony, the verdicts arrived. Tabitha, facing multiple counts of attempted murder through poisoning, received 15 years. The judge's words were scathing as he detailed her pattern of psychological abuse and manipulation. Mark's sentence was even harsher. Life imprisonment for orchestrating multiple deaths, his empire of fraud and murder exposed to the world. His final attempt to blame everything on Tabitha only served to increase his sentence. As they led the prisoners away, Patrick stood, gathering his family close. The justice they'd fought for had finally arrived, not through violence or illegal vengeance, but through the systematic exposure of truth. They had dismantled an empire of evil piece by piece, using the very weapons that had once been turned against them. The predators who'd thought themselves invulnerable were finally facing the consequences of their actions. 1 year later, Caroline adjusted her graduation cap, the Ivy League University's prestigious emblem glinting in the sunlight. Her research on narcissistic abuse patterns had earned her early acceptance into the forensic psychology program, turning her trauma into a force for positive change. Ready? Patrick appeared beside her, pride evident in his expression. This graduation was everything the last one should have been. A genuine celebration of achievement, untainted by betrayal. More than ready, Caroline smiled, spotting familiar faces in the crowd. Joyce, who now ran the victim support division of their foundation. Cheryl, who headed the legal team helping survivors reclaim their lives. Alberto, whose expertise had helped countless victims understand and overcome their abuse. Your speech is last on the program, Patrick reminded her. The perfect position for your message? Caroline nodded, thinking of the words she'd prepared. Not just her story, but the story of every person who'd been manipulated, gaslit, and betrayed. Every survivor who'd found strength in unity and purpose in helping others. The ceremony proceeded with dignity and joy. When Caroline's name was called as the graduate speaker, she approached the podium with confidence born of hard-won wisdom. Some people think revenge is best served cold, she began, her voice carrying clearly across the gathered crowd. But I've learned it's best served with justice, healing, and hope. She shared their story, not just the betrayal and manipulation, but the triumph of turning darkness into light. How their foundation had helped hundreds of survivors rebuild their lives. How their legal team had exposed dozens of similar predatory operations. Today, we celebrate more than academic achievement, she continued. We celebrate the power of truth over deception, of justice over manipulation, of hope over despair. Each of us has the power to turn our darkest chapters into light for others. In the audience, Patrick watched his daughter shine, surrounded by their real family, not bound by blood, but by loyalty, truth, and survival. His new company, built from the ashes of betrayal, had become a beacon for those fighting financial predators. Joyce sat beside him, her own triumph evident. The victim support division she ran had become a model for similar programs nationwide. Anna's death had sparked a mission that would save countless lives. Cheryl beamed with pride, both as an aunt and as the legal warrior who'd helped make justice possible. Her team worked tirelessly, ensuring that other predators like Mark and Tabitha found no safe haven in the legal system. As Caroline concluded her speech, the applause was thunderous. She had transformed her pain into purpose, her betrayal into a mission that would protect others from similar fate. Later, at the celebration dinner, Patrick raised his glass. To Caroline, he said simply, "Who proved that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fires." To justice, Joyce added, thinking of Anna. To truth, Cheryl contributed. To family, Caroline finished. The real kind, built on loyalty and love, not manipulation and lies. They had done more than survive betrayal. They had transformed it into triumph. Patrick's new company worked to identify and prevent financial predation. Joyce's victim support programs helped survivors rebuild their lives. Cheryl's legal team ensured justice remained accessible to those who needed it most. And Caroline, standing tall in her graduation robes, had become living proof that the greatest revenge isn't just destroying those who hurt you. It's building something stronger from the ashes of their betrayal. The Hutchinson family had been tested by fire, betrayed by those they trusted most. But from those ashes, they had built something remarkable, a legacy of justice, healing, and hope that would endure long after the pain of betrayal had faded. In the end, they had achieved something far greater than revenge. They had transformed their darkest chapter into a light that would guide others from darkness to dawn, proving that the most powerful response to evil isn't just its destruction, but the creation of something beautiful in its place. Epilogue: The Legacy. 10 years later. The Metropolitan Correctional Center's visiting room buzzed with muted conversations. Mark Riley, prisoner number 247891, sat hunched at a metal table, his designer suits replaced by prison orange, his once commanding presence diminished by a decade of confinement. Another appeal denied. His court-appointed lawyer informed him, shuffling papers. The evidence remains insurmountable. Mark's empire had crumbled to dust. Every asset seized, every fraudulent deal exposed, every victim compensated through civil suits. His former associates had turned state's evidence, each revelation adding years to his sentence. Tabitha's release hearing is next month, the lawyer added, watching his client carefully. Though given her behavior in prison, Mark laughed bitterly. The woman who'd been his perfect partner in destruction had unraveled completely behind bars. Her attempts to manipulate fellow inmates and guards had only earned her extended isolation and additional psychiatric evaluations. She still refuses to acknowledge her crimes, the lawyer continued. The evaluation board considers her an unrepentant danger to society. Between that and the new evidence from her previous victims. Previous victims? Mark's voice cracked from disuse. The Hutchinson Foundation's investigative team keeps finding more. 3 marriages before you, not just 2. 2 of those husbands died under suspicious circumstances. The Hutchinson Foundation. Mark's hands clenched at the name. What had started as a support network for financial fraud victims had grown into an international organization, its tentacles reaching into every aspect of fraud prevention and victim advocacy. Across town, in a sleek office building, Patrick Hutchinson reviewed the latest reports. His company, Phoenix Securities, had become the world's leading authority on identifying and preventing financial predation. Their algorithms detected fraudulent patterns that had eluded traditional investigators for years. The Singapore branch just caught another operation like Mark's, Cheryl announced, entering his office. Her legal team had expanded to 50 attorneys, specializing in representing survivors of financial and psychological abuse. Same pattern. Marriage, manipulation, mercury poisoning. Alert Caroline's team, Patrick instructed. His daughter's research had revolutionized the understanding of narcissistic abuse in financial crimes. Her doctoral thesis on the intersection of psychological manipulation and economic predation had become required reading in law enforcement academies. Already done. Cheryl smiled. She's flying in tonight, by the way. The FBI's cybercrime division wants her input on their new profiling protocols. Caroline's transformation from victim to expert had been remarkable. Her forensic psychology practice specialized in helping survivors recover and rebuild, while her academic work exposed the patterns that enabled predators like her mother to operate. The Foundation's headquarters occupied the top floors of the building. Joyce Kuhn's victim support division had helped thousands rebuild their lives, her sister Anna's memory honored in every person they saved. Mark's latest appeal was denied, Joyce reported, joining them. And our investigators found evidence linking Tabitha to suspicious deaths in her earlier marriages. Forward everything to Morrison, Patrick directed. The FBI agent who'd arrested Mark and Tabitha had become a close ally, his task force specializing in complex financial predation cases. Already sent. He's added it to the evidence block for her parole hearing. Joyce checked her tablet. Violet wants a meeting, by the way. The Civil Suit Division has identified another of Mark's hidden asset clusters. Violet Gardner had transformed her own trauma into purpose. The civil litigation team she led had recovered billions for fraud victims, dismantling the networks that enabled predators to hide their gains. What's the status on Tabitha? Patrick asked, though he already knew. He made it his business to stay informed about his ex-wife's condition. Deteriorating, Cheryl replied. The prison psychiatrist reports increased paranoid delusions. She's convinced Caroline visits her regularly, plotting to break her out. The reality was far different. Caroline hadn't visited her mother once in 10 years. She'd channeled that energy into building something far more meaningful. The Stockholm conference called, Joyce added. They want Caroline to keynote next month. Apparently, her paper on breaking trauma bonds in financial abuse cases is causing quite a stir. Patrick nodded, satisfaction evident. His daughter had taken her mother's lessons in manipulation and turned them into a framework for identifying and stopping predators. The psychological warfare techniques Tabitha had employed were now being used to protect potential victims. "In the documentary?" he asked. "Final edits complete." Cheryl pulled up the trailer on her tablet. The Predator's Web, The Fall of Mark Riley, would premiere at next month's True Crime Festival. They're calling it a landmark exposure of white-collar sociopathy. The trailer showed Mark and Tabitha in their prime, intercut with victim testimonies and evidence from their crimes. The final shot was particularly powerful. Tabitha in prison grays, her mask of sophistication cracked to reveal the desperate predator beneath. Speaking of Tabitha, Joyce interjected. "The prison called. She had another incident." "Define incident." Patrick's voice remained neutral, but his eyes hardened. "She attacked her cellmate, claiming the woman was Caroline in disguise, gathering evidence against her." Joyce consulted her notes. "That's the third violent outbreak this month. They've moved her to permanent isolation." The woman who'd once ruled society gatherings now spent 23 hours a day in a 6x9 cell. Her attempts to manipulate prison staff had backfired spectacularly, each failed scheme adding to her reputation as a dangerous manipulator. "The mercury poisoning investigation expanded," Cheryl added. "They found traces in samples from her previous husband's exhumations. The DA's office is considering additional charges." "Let them." Patrick's voice held no emotion. "Let every crime, every victim, every manipulation come to light. That's the difference between justice and revenge. Justice doesn't end until every truth is exposed." Later that evening, the family gathered at Patrick's home. Caroline had indeed flown in, her presence drawing the others like gravity. Alberto joined them, his expertise still vital to their mission of understanding and stopping predators like Mark and Tabitha. "To think," Caroline mused, studying old case files, "she thought she was teaching me to be just like her. Instead, she taught me exactly how to destroy people like her." The Foundation's reached milestone numbers, Joyce reported. 10,000 survivors helped, 20 major predatory operations exposed, 15 countries with active chapters, and 2 predators who'll never hurt anyone again, Cheryl added, satisfaction evident. Patrick watched his real family, not bound by blood but by shared purpose and unwavering loyalty. They transformed personal tragedy into a force for global change, their influence reaching far beyond simple revenge. In their separate cells, Mark and Tabitha lived with the consequences of their actions. Their empire of manipulation had crumbled, their techniques of destruction now turned into tools for protection. Every day, the organization born from their betrayal grew stronger, helping more survivors, exposing more predators. The latest psychological evaluation suggests Tabitha's complete break from reality is permanent, Alberto noted, reviewing prison reports. She's created an alternate world where she's still in control, still manipulating events. The irony is, she finally has what she wanted. She's living in a fantasy of her own creation. Mark's reality was equally fitting. The man who'd built his fortune stealing others' dreams now spent his days in monotonous routine. Every attempt to leverage his old connections met with silence. His former society friends had vanished, his wealth seized, his legacy one of documented evil rather than business success. Caroline's book is topping the academic bestseller lists, Joyce mentioned. Predatory patterns, understanding and stopping financial abuse had become the definitive text in its field. And the Foundation's preventive education program is being adopted by major corporations worldwide, Cheryl added. "We're stopping these predators before they can strike." Patrick absorbed these reports with quiet satisfaction. They'd achieved something far beyond revenge. They'd created a lasting legacy of protection and justice. Every person helped, every predator exposed, every life rebuilt was a victory over the darkness Mark and Tabitha had represented. "Some say living well is the best revenge," Caroline observed, echoing her graduation speech from years ago. "But I think helping others live well, protecting them from predators like Mark and Tabitha, that's true justice." The evening continued, plans made, strategies refined, missions expanded. In their cells, Mark and Tabitha lived with the consequences of their choices. But in this room, surrounded by purpose and dedication, their former victims had transformed pain into power, betrayal into beacon. The predators who'd thought themselves invincible had instead become cautionary tales, their methods exposed, their patterns documented, their destruction complete. While Mark and Tabitha's world had shrunk to prison cells, their victims' world expanded daily, touching lives across continents. It was, Patrick reflected, the perfect ending. Not just destruction of the guilty, but construction of something magnificent from the ashes of betrayal. A legacy that would outlive them all, protecting future generations from predators who thought themselves above justice. The Hutchinson Foundation stood as living proof that the most powerful response to evil isn't just its destruction, but the creation of systems to prevent its recurrence. In trying to destroy Patrick's family, Mark and Tabitha had instead catalyzed the creation of their own worst nightmare. An organization dedicated to exposing and stopping people exactly like them. Justice, it seemed, had a sense of irony after all. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.